For the clarity of this story, I must mention that I have a hearing disability that has made me hard of hearing. I know that there are some things in life that I'll never understand, but I still look back on this experience wondering what could have happened and what I should have done differently. This all happened around a year ago. The holiday season had just rolled by and I was settling down from traveling and all the get-togethers with family and friends. I live in a small suburban neighborhood that borders a forest in southern Quebec. It's a quiet area as most of the residents are familiar with each other, which I honestly kind of prefer as it adds a warmer atmosphere. Around winter, I like to take my dog Monty on walks in the local forest. He's a Rottweiler Husky mix, which is perfect for me since I enjoy going for runs from time to time. The forest has several trails, none of which are challenging for non-hikers. I remember it being an afternoon. I had just finished having a late lunch and decided to burn the calories. On a walk with Monty, as usual, my dog goes ballistic when we turn the corner on my street towards the forest entrance. It was relatively cold for a February day. A fresh blanket of snow lined the paths overnight, creating this nearly blank canvas. As usual, I let my dog off the leash so he could run around. There were a few yellow patches along with some boot prints in the snow, which signaled to me that several people had already taken their dogs out earlier. Most people like to go on walks before noon since the sun tends to set around 4:00 p.m., so I didn't expect to see anybody out at that time. After walking for around 30 minutes, we came to a fork in the path. I noticed that one of the paths hadn't been walked yet, so feeling semi-adventurous, I decided to take it. I have a pretty concrete memory of the trails, so I knew exactly where I was going. The trail led to a clearing, which was great since I wanted to check out the native birds with the binoculars I had gotten for Christmas. I remember scanning the surroundings until I saw a strange shape along the tree line in the distance. When I focused my binoculars, I saw a blue tarp and what looked to be a makeshift shelter. Curious as I was to check it out, it was getting dark and I wanted to get home. Turning around, Monty and I started walking back. As usual, he ran up ahead, but something seemed off in his behavior. He was much more alert and was sniffing the trail more than he normally would from what I observed in the past. When I looked down at the trail, my eyes widened. There was a set of footprints in the snow, much larger than my own. I remember turning my boots over out of sheer confusion to compare than the ones in the snow. The prints were different, which left me with even more questions. There were no other forks in the trail, so whoever took it had to have passed me at some point. I figured they must have passed me while I was using my binoculars. At the time, it seemed like the most logical explanation, so I tried not to overthink it. At this point, it was significantly darker outside, but I could still make out my surroundings. As we were walking back, Monty stopped abruptly and started barking relentlessly in my direction. As I turned around, that's when I saw him. There was a man probably around 6'4", wearing charcoal-colored snow pants and a white camo jacket only, about a meter away from me. He didn't make any movements towards me. He just stood there with his hands in his coat pockets. I didn't recognize him from anybody in the neighborhood, so I assumed he must have been a hiker or someone from out of town. He looked like he was muttering something to me, but I couldn't read his lips due to the lack of lighting and not knowing if he was speaking English or French, which are the two commonly spoken languages in Quebec. I felt like an idiot at that moment for not bringing my phone with me, so I ended up trying to communicate with him that I was hard of hearing and that it was getting late. I got back home around 4:30. By then it was completely dark out. I remember following my standard night routine, not really thinking much about the encounter, but in the middle of the night something happened that still shakes me to this day. I woke up to Monty licking my hand, which is something he usually does to get me out of bed in the morning. I tapped my phone to check the time, and to my surprise, it was 3 o'clock. At .m, I noticed a message from my neighbor asking if everything was all right, which, if I'm being honest, confused me at first. The message was a few minutes old and asked if everything was all right since Monty had been barking like he was possessed. I looked up from my phone to see that Monty was no longer in my room. I walked downstairs to find him barking hysterically at the patio door. As I approached the door, I struggled to see anything with my vision still blurry. I tried to focus my eyes when the motion sensor light turned on. At that moment, my heart sank. The man from the forest was standing there in my backyard. I didn't think twice to process any more questions. I stepped away from the door and texted 911. I don't think I've ever texted 911 faster than I did that night. I ran up to my room with Monty and grabbed the machete from under my bed. I'm a shorter woman with a background in martial arts, but I know damn well that the best move in a fight is to not fight at all. I sat there in my room guarding Monty and myself until the police came. With my heart beating out of my chest, I sat opposite from the door with Monty by my side. It didn't last long until Monty sprang up and started barking violently at the bedroom door. My hands were sweating profusely as I watched a shadow cast in from underneath the door. The movement in front of the nightlight suggested the man was seconds from breaking into my room. Those had to be the longest minutes of my life as I anticipated the door handle turning or the door completely breaking in. Luckily for me, it never did. When the police arrived, I explained everything to them while they searched the property. The glass on the patio was smashed completely, but besides that, nothing was missing and everything was still relatively the same. The police found the gate in my backyard open. It leads to the forest, which is where they believe the man disappeared to. I let them know about the shelter I saw in the woods the day before. I took Monty and some of my belongings to stay with a family friend for a few days while I got the patio door fixed. I never got a follow-up from the police after the incident, but ever since that day I decided to stick to roads when walking my dog, not trying to think too much about the incident. My name is Ember, and I'm a 16-year-old girl who lives in Illinois with my younger sister, Kate, who's 15. My dad works for a deforestation group about 30 minutes from our house. It was a normal morning on December 5th as my sister and I were getting ready to go out to the movies. We decided to go watch a somewhat new horror movie, Terrifier 3, which had some Christmas stuff included in it. We all knew we was 18 plus, but nobody paid much attention. Plus, we looked older than we were anyway. We made our way to the movies and easily got in thanks to our appearance. However, halfway through the film, as everyone was anticipating the next scene, my phone buzzed loudly enough for the whole theater to hear, which really killed everyone's vibe as they all turned toward me with annoyed looks. My sister and I scurried out until I tripped, which was embarrassing enough. After we exited the theater, I checked my phone to see who called me. It was my dad, but instead of calling back, I received a text message that said something like, "Hey, would you mind bringing me some lunch since the small cafe in the woods is shut today?" I looked over at Kate and she looked at me confused, but neither of us second guessed the message since it seemed normal. We arrived home, packed some food for him, and took my car downtown to the wood. I've always loved that place and never felt uneasy there because it was large and secluded. The scenery was amazing with a hill that led down to a lake perfect for fishing and photos. After a while, Kate and I got out of the car and we walked down the path through the woods. I took out my phone to call my dad, but he didn't pick up. Confused, I looked over at Kate, who was just as confused as I was. Why wouldn't he respond when he just called us at the movies? I decided to message him instead, reminding him that we were at the woods to give him his lunch. After a few moments, I saw the 3 little dots on the screen appear, showing he was typing. He responded by telling us to walk down the small hill and wait for him at the lake, which we followed. The sun was slowly setting since it was winter, so sunset came much earlier. The sky had a beautiful radiant orange glow over the hill and down the mountain. Snapping out of my thoughts, Kate pointed down to the lake, where a man in black was sitting on the deck by the water with his back to us. We guessed it was our dad. We walked down a bit more and stopped a little behind him. I called out his name, but he didn't move. Kate grew uneasy, and her attitude made the scene even more eerie. I slowly pulled off the hood he was wearing and revealed a man who definitely wasn't our dad. Kate and I shrieked as he turned around and began waving my dad's phone around like a maniac, smiling like he was happy to see us scared. I blurted out asking why he was using our dad's phone, but he didn't respond. Instead, he lunged and grabbed Kate's arm as she screamed. Luckily, I was strong enough to pull her away, and we started running as fast as we could. The adrenaline pushed through us so much that I had never seen either of us run that fast. Behind me, I heard stomps getting closer, so I knew we were being chased. I didn't dare to turn around. Finally, we reached the car. I slammed the door shut and locked it as the man came to my window, then crouched down out of sight as I reversed and sped away back home. When we got home, my dad and mom were there. We arrived panting out of breath and explained the whole situation to them. My dad was furious and said his phone had been stolen while he was working, so he decided to come back home. He said the man must have taken his phone and messaged us. My dad called the police and filed the report. They used the IMEI number to track the device, which was still on the deck by the lake, and they returned the phone to my dad. They said there wasn't much they could do since the phone was already found. I I thought this was the end of it, but I wouldn't be telling this if it was. 6 hours later, around 1 a.m., I got an unknown message that said, "I like that your house is lit only by your bedroom TV." I immediately went cold and pale. I paused the TV and heard rustling outside my window. My room was on the second floor. I shut my phone and listened. Slowly, I peeked through the blinds and saw the man smiling with a gun pointed at my window. I screamed and pulled away as glass shattered everywhere across my room. My parents ran in, followed by Kate. I screamed for them to crouch and told them the man was outside with a gun. When my dad went to check, the man was gone. Then we heard another loud bang and more glass breaking downstairs in the kitchen. We ran and locked the bedroom as Kate called 911. My mom hugged us as we cried in fear. Throughout the whole situation, I kept wondering how he knew where we lived. A few moments later, the police arrived and searched the whole house, but nobody was there. Kate and I explained the situation again, and one of the officers said they should check the car. Surprisingly, a small AirTag was found on my tire, which explained how the man knew where we lived and why he crouched before I sped. Out of the woods, the police told us they would patrol the streets and do everything they could to find the man. A few months later, he still hadn't been found, but he never returned, which I hope it stays that way. Me, Kate, and my parents are still traumatized by the situation. But mostly I felt stupid as the older sister for not being alarmed when the person didn't respond to calls and only responded through texts. All I know is that I'll be more careful and never go to secluded places again, especially when I'm responsible for someone else's safety